So let me give you a stat that should make you pay attention. After major orthopedic injuries and surgeries, roughly 30 to 40% of people never regain their previous level of function. So this isn't because the surgery failed. It's not because the injury was that catastrophic. It's just because the recovery process was not handled properly. So think about that. Nearly half the people that go through something like an ACL surgery, like shoulder reconstruction, ankle repair, never get back to where they were before pre-surgery. Not because the body can't heal, but because a lot of people, they accidentally sabotage their healing process. With too little movement, too much inactivity, terrible sleep, poor nutrition, and overusing things like pain medications, etc. So you'll find a lot of these people, they throw money at all the gadgets too, right? Every supplement on the internet, all that bullshit. Trying to make the, red light therapy do things it can't, or crouch therapy chambers, magnetic braces and all this shit. Most of it does very little to nothing. Research shows that muscle loss begins within the first 2 days of immobilization. So within 1 week, you can lose up to 5% of your muscle mass of an immobilized limb. And people like smokers, right? Users of nicotine, and especially people that smoke, double the risk of surgical complications, right? Like delayed bone healing, etc. So healing is proven to not be random like we think it is. So the truth is, if you support your body's biology properly, you can dramatically influence how fast you recover. So my name is Dr. Ryan Hewitt. Of course, I'm the host of the Weaponized Body podcast, bringing to you the latest in metabolic movement and mindset. And right now, I'm currently in the post-surgical window of a traumatic ankle injury that I sustained 2 weeks ago now, where I slipped while I was running with my 40-pound rucksack. Of course, I'm in New England here. Slipped on a patch of ice, and I landed on my foot behind me. One foot went out in front of me, one foot stayed behind me, and I traumatically dislocated my ankle and snapped my fibula in half. So I had surgery just this past Tuesday, and now I'm a week after my surgery now. The challenge with my injury is that it's ligamentous, but also bone. So with bone, you have to immobilize, you have to cast it. And with ligamentous and tendinous injuries, generally you want to start to move it as soon as possible. So I'm in a tough 2-week window where I have to immobilize, unfortunately. So it's very hard for me to support the need for that movement to happen right now. But as soon as I get this cast cut off, I'm going to start really hitting the movement and the physical therapy part hard. But I'm going to let you know today my approach to what I'm going to do post traumatic injury and orthopedic surgery. So things that I've experienced personally. So I have had things like traumatic ankle sprains, shoulder repairs, knee repairs, lower back disc herniation. So I'm well versed and experienced personally as far as the rehabilitation process, but also being a chiropractor, I am an expert in helping people recover and restore function as quickly as possible post injuries, specifically spine injuries, but also now a lot of limb and orthopedic injuries. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to break down, first of all, just from the basics, like the biology of healing, the core pillars that actually accelerate recovery, the therapies and peptides and hormones and whatnot that I'm using currently. So again, this is N=1, but supported by research and things that are tried and true. And I think you'd be interested in listening to this whole podcast because I'm going to go over things that sabotage healing. And then also what are some things that are complete wastes of money that people love to spend money on. So let's start from ground zero, which is, I think it's very important that you understand how the body heals. Because if you understand how the body heals, then you can support it and try to avoid things that are going to prevent it from doing what it wants. Phase 1 is obviously the inflammation phase. This is just right after acute injury. So it happens within the first, days to several days after the injury or surgery. So this is where your body sends immune cells to the injury site. And what it's busy doing here is it's busy clearing damaged tissue, and it releases all kinds of what are called cytokines and growth signals and things that stimulate blood flow and swelling and inflammation. And because of the swelling and inflammation, this is where it becomes acutely painful. But it's necessary for healing. You have to understand that. And the conventional wisdom around this area or this time frame of healing is that we do the protocol called RICE, right? Rest, ice, compression, and elevate. Now, I've discovered that some of this protocol is actually goes against what actually supports this phase, what your body needs in order to like heal as quickly and as supportive as possible. I really like the love approach, actually. So instead of RICE, you're using the love approach, which is load, which is gradually resume weight-bearing activity, especially for like tendinous ligamentous injuries. Optimism, maintaining a positive mindset, which actually really affects your outcomes. Vascularization, so performing pain-free like cardiovascular activity to increase blood flow, and exercise to restore mobility and strength. In the beginning phases, you could also use the peace approach, which is like the immediate care, which this would apply more to this like acute phase right here, which is protection. You want to restrict movement, within the first week. Elevate, raise the injured limb above the heart, which is what I'm doing right now to assist the draining and the clearing process. Avoid, the A is for avoid anti-inflammatories, actually, avoiding NSAIDs and acetaminophen and whatnot, which actually hinder and inhibit the body's natural healing process. Compression can help as well. Bandages and whatnot, not too much compression, but some to increase the circulation. And education, obviously learning how to do the proper supportive techniques like, massage to allow the injury to heal naturally. So peace and love. So you start with the peace protocol and then you end up with the love protocol. So again, it's protection, elevation, avoid, compression, education right off the bat. And then after the acute phase and the subacute, sort of like second and third phase, it's load gradually, optimism, vascularization, and exercise. So I love those protocols better than the RICE protocol because they found that actually like, what's going on here? Well, you have inflammation, swelling, and the body's doing that naturally. What does ice do? Well, ice actually does the opposite. It constricts blood vessels. It prevents the inflammatory process and can impair and slow down recovery. Now, to try to mitigate a little bit of pain, nothing like a bit of good old ice. It's fine. Within the first week, it's all right to do a little bit of ice. It's not going to completely prevent. But if you're chronically icing, it can actually prevent healing to happen, as rapidly as possible. Also, things that prevent the acute swelling are things like non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, right? Aspirins, right? Ibuprofens, naproxens. That stuff actually prevents these cytokines from doing their work. Okay. Obviously, acetaminophen's also the Tylenols. So you're screwing up the signals that your body are trying to send to rebuild. Now, here's where I draw the line though. And I did take medication in the first week post-surgery, and this was only to sleep. This is where I draw the line. It's like, hey, listen, if you are so uncomfortable that you cannot sleep, then you're not healing. And I'm going to talk about how critical sleep is in the healing process. So I did take 800 milligram ibuprofens only at night to try to get a little more comfortable with my foot elevated to sleep. So that's phase one. So that's within like the first week or two after the injury or surgery. Now, phase two is the tissue building phase. This is where your body begins to rebuild tissue. So there's unique cells called fibroblasts. Okay, so this produces collagen and tissue. It increases blood flow and encourages new vessel growth to happen. Cells migrate to the injury, and this obviously this is like the growing phase, requires certain nutrients in order for this to happen properly. So things like amino acids, protein, oxygen, okay, blood flow, nutrients, again, in nutrition and blood flow, and then energy, right? So your body needs to be able to have a good energetic balance in order for you to perform these activities. So if you're under eating, under sleeping, poorly nourished, the healing will slow down. Now, phase 3 is the remodeling phase. This is the longest phase. This can take months to even years, depending on the injury. This is where collagen fibers reorganize. So you've heard of like scar tissue and, obviously like, tissue that you want to reorganize and, to heal, such as, muscle, tendon, ligament, bone, of course. Bone strengthens, tissue adapts to stress. This is why the rehab and loading matters a lot, because your body builds strength and resilience based on the stress you place on it, right? There's a law called Wolff's Law. It's where you put more stress equals more dense, bone building or tissue building, where your body will adapt to that stress. So what I'm going to talk about next, so those are the 3 phases of healing. So we're going to talk about are the 6 pillars of healing as fast as possible. So these are the 6 that I think about when I put together my protocol of what I'm going to do to heal as quickly as possible. Now, number 1, and not by accident, is sleep, right? I mentioned how powerful sleep is as a recovery tool. I talk about sleep all the time on this podcast. So deep sleep is where growth hormone stimulus happens, where your body, obviously uses that magical hormone to turn over all of your cells, tissues, muscles, ligaments, everything. It's like an anti-aging hormone that, converts in the liver to IGF-1. Remember, insulin like growth factor, and helps the healing process. Number 2, this is where immune activity improves actually when you're sleeping. Okay, your body shuts down a lot of its neurological activity in the brain, and it focuses more on body repair when it comes to the immune system. This is why tissue repair accelerates as well. Here's the deal. Sleep deprivation has literally been shown to impair recovery in everybody, but there's some nice studies out there that show how sleep impairs recovery in athletes. You don't have to be an athlete to have sleep impair you. When you're injured, sleep is just a non-negotiable. That's why I draw the line at like, okay, if we're going to use medication to what it's designed for, it's designed to help us do the things that are going to help support everyday life, or, help support the recovery process to do the things that are high priorities, such as start to move more pain-free and start to sleep properly. Those are very, very, very critical. So pillar 1 was sleep. Pillar 2 is nutrition, protein and nutrition. Here's a big, I think like a big mistake people make when they have injuries. And in my brain, I thought of this too, but I know better, is like, because I was actually in more of like a bulk or like a muscle building focus with my nutrition. So I was eating a lot of calories when I hurt myself. So immediately after the injury, I'm like, wow, I'm going to get fat if I continue to eat all these calories. Now, of course, I dialed it in an intelligent fashion, but one of the worst things you could do when you are hurt is to start to dial back your calories and create a deficit. You do not want to eat in a deficit when you're injured, okay? You want to make sure you're getting enough protein, okay? So like 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight at the minimum, all right? Right now, I'm probably at I was eating about 280 grams of protein myself. At this point here, I'm eating more like 225 grams of protein. So like during this recovery phase, protein needs to actually increase, not decrease, right? Because protein supports the rebuilding of muscle, ligaments, tendons, connective tissue. So don't screw that up. Don't eat less, right? You also want to make sure you're getting proper micronutrients from your food. So do not eat crap. You want to make sure you're focusing on even better food quality if you're not already practicing that. So micronutrients such as vitamin C, which supports collagen synthesis. Zinc supports immune function. Vitamin D supports bone healing, and so on and so forth. So very important to get proper micronutrition from your nutrients, proper micronutrients from your nutrition, proper protein and calories. So pillar 3 is blood flow. So healing requires circulation. Duh. Okay. What increases circulation better than anything? Movement. Movement improves circulation. Complete inactivity slows the healing process. I'm in a very frustrating place right now because I literally have to be off of my feet and have my leg elevated for 2 weeks while I have this cast on. So I just have to suck it up for a couple weeks of being, kind of a slug. But as soon as this cast is off, man, I'm going to get moving. Obviously, you want to be intelligent. You don't want to re-injure. But movement and blood flow is super duper important. Even if if you injure your shoulder, for example, it is still super important to get on the bike and move your body and get some blood flow happening through your body. Move your body, circulate, walk. Okay. Things like that are very important. Blood delivers oxygen and nutrients to injured tissue. That's all you need to know. So make sure you're getting movement. Pillar 4 is progressive loading. So again, it's another movement principle. That's how important it is. I talked about Wolff's Law, how, bone density follows where you place stress. So it becomes stronger when stress is applied. That's the principle. So how do you increase the strength of a ligament, a tendon, a muscle? You put stress on it. Now, I'm a huge proponent of physical therapy post-injury because then you're going to be working with a professional that's going to help you load safely, especially in the first 3 to 6 weeks of post-injury. So, because you don't want your muscles shrinking, you don't want your bone density to decrease, you don't want your tendons to weaken. You want to make sure you're controlling the stress to increase the amount of robust healing is happening. Pillar 5 is metabolic health. Make sure you're supporting your metabolic health, right? So poor metabolic health slows healing. That's why people that are healthy that injure themselves seem to heal faster than people that are unhealthy that hurt themselves. Okay. It's no secret there. Right. So if you think about diabetics, for example, diabetics have some of the worst outcomes when it comes to healing from a wound. There's surgeons that I know that do not operate on diabetics because they just do not get better. It is a contraindication for things like joint replacements and whatnot. Okay, it's due to impaired circulation and poor immune function. So stable blood sugar, right? Making sure you have good immune function, making sure you're fit and healthy. Super important to make sure you're focusing on good metabolic health. Obviously, there's principles there in all categories that support metabolic health, like sleeping well, controlling stress, exercising and eating properly and drinking water, right? The 5 levers that I always talk about. And then the last pillar that I think about when it comes to post-surgical or post-traumatic injury recovery is stress management. This is a tough one because you're going to go through a lot of tough times post-surgery, whether it's dealing with the pain or just change up in your life and the sacrifices and all of the things that are going to have to change with your life post-injury, right? When you're psychologically stressed, it slows healing, period, right? Elevated cortisol impairs immune function. So research shows that it can measurably delay wound healing. There's lots and lots of research out there. So making sure you're supporting your mindset, right? Whether it's being around positive people, whether it's making sure that you're putting good things into your brain, making sure you're reading and listening and watching things that are going to put positive nutrients into your brain, garbage in, garbage out, right? And making sure that you're, practicing things like stress reduction protocols. Just because you're not doing the things you're always used to doing, it doesn't mean you need to stop meditating, praying, journaling, whatever it is that you do to help you cope and deal with stress. So what I'm going to do now that we have the foundation of understanding of the phases of healing and, the pillars that I think about when I want to support healing, I'm going to talk about my personal recovery stack. So things that I am doing and focusing on to get as better as quickly as possible. I tell you something that right after the injury, when I had my x-rays, there's a was a nurse practitioner, I think, that had a look at me first that helped reduce my ankle and cast it and everything. And he had known the surgeon that I had originally been scheduled with. He's like, yeah, he's good. And, I've seen people, they're never quite the same pre-injury. And a lot of people don't run again. They don't jump again, all this stuff. He's just telling me all this stuff to just, and he's being truthful and realistic, but listen, I have no interest in normal, or I have no interest in, not getting back to pre-injury status, or even potentially better than pre-injury status. When I visited the orthopedist who actually did my ankle, he was a trauma surgeon. He was a war vet. He was a trauma surgeon in the Army and for the Navy as well, and for sports teams. And he's like, man, you can get back to jumping and running and squatting, full loads. It's like, just have to be really diligent. You got to be really committed. And I was like, yep, I'm your guy. I can do that. That's what I want to hear. Right. So I'm going to tell you about my recovery stack that I'm using. So first, of course, is nutrition. And I touched on this before, like my nutrition's not changing a lot. I did dial back my calories slightly, but I'm not in a deficit. You want to be careful that you do not eat in a deficit. I know, like, it's hard for me psychologically because I'm like, oh man, I'm shrinking. I'm not working out. My muscles are going to disappear. I'm going to get fat. But listen, as long as you're eating enough protein, you're getting into all those micronutrients that you need to get in there. Your body needs that energy and the amino acids and whatnot to rebuild and repair. So I am supplying and supporting my body with enough calories right now to make sure that I am healing properly. I'm making sure that I'm drinking enough water. Water is very difficult for me to drink right now. Like, I was used to drinking a gallon easily because I train 5 to 6 days a week. Like, it's easy for me to drink like 50, 60 ounces while I'm working out. Well, I'm not right now. So it's been a huge slog for me to try to choke down enough water, but I'm getting about 100 ounces right now, which I'm pretty happy about. But making sure you're drinking enough water. It's really, really important. My sleep, I prioritize my sleep. I'm still trying to get to bed at the same time. It's been tough. We just had the daylight savings. I don't know if we saved the daylight finally, but man, I found that I've slept in a little bit recently too. I think that I've typically operated maybe on a little bit of lack of sleep. So my bedtime, I got to continue to pull that back to 10 o'clock. Sometimes it leaks to 10:30, 11. But getting up at 6:30, 7 o'clock, I definitely want to get to bed by 10. I'm trying to prioritize sleep, trying to get like as much uninterrupted sleep as I can. Like I said, I was using a bit of ibuprofen to sleep more comfortably. It's tough to keep my leg elevated in bed and sleep comfortably. I think we ended up with my dog and my daughter in the bed 2 nights ago. So, but sleep is a priority. And the rehab is going to begin when I get the cast off next week. So that's going to be week 3 to 12. I'm going to work with a physical therapist. Sure, I could do the rehab myself. I will do the rehab myself after, week 12, because the rehab will continue after that, rebuilding. But just initially, just really trying to get professional help with this specific injury, because, I want to get better as quickly as I can. So I will be doing physical therapy a couple times a week, and then my own physical therapy daily. I'll be documenting some of that with some of my social media. And of course, the peptides that I'm going to use and I am using already. Let me tell you about those. So we've discussed one of the most famous peptides for healing, BPC 157 and TB 500. I'm currently using those. So those are related to like increased blood flow, blood vessel growth, tendon, ligament healing, nerve protection, things like that. BPC is more specific for that, like blood flow and ligament repair and tissue repair. And TB 500 is like helping that cell migration and the immune system do its thing. So these obviously have some human trials that are to be determined, but so far, like a lot of anecdotal evidence. And I've used both of these peptides before, and I've had good results with my elbow injury in the past, for example. I'm already starting to use this daily right now during this acute phase. And I'm going to continue throughout, the first 3 months here. I'll be using both of these peptides. I'm also using a growth hormone releasing hormone peptide called testosterone, and I'm going to do a protocol of that for 12 weeks. And then I'm also going to cycle in some ipamorelin. So both of these stimulate growth hormone release. Remember, growth hormone and insulin-like growth factor, they play roles in collagen synthesis, muscle recovery, tissue repair. Testosterone initially stimulates growth hormone releasing hormone pathways, and then ipamorelin stimulates ghrelin receptors. I have talked about this on past podcasts, but that also increased growth hormone pulses. So I'm going to work on both of those mechanisms, trying to heal my body as fast as I can, with some growth hormone stimulus. There's 2 different mitochondrial peptides I'm introducing also, and I started using these. One of them I've used before. It's called MOTS-C. Research suggests that this increases metabolic signaling, right? Mitochondrial efficiency, which obviously is very important for all cellular function, energy production, insulin sensitivity, all that kind of stuff, which should support recovery. And then one that's well known called NAD+. It's a key molecule involved, again, in mitochondrial function and cell repair. So levels of NAD tend to decline with age, me being 46 at this point. I definitely could use the support here with some of the NAD metabolism, so it can improve cellular energy, repair pathways. Again, all these peptides, this is all the stuff I'm doing. Evidence is still evolving. This is definitely not like a, recommendation for everybody to do this. This is what I'm using, and I'm going to, report my results, through my journey with social media, with the podcast. I'm going to continue my testosterone therapy. I do daily microdoses. I'm going to keep doing this. So important. The thought process for some people is like, oh, I'm going to stop taking testosterone because I'm not working out. It's like, no. It's the worst thing you could do. If you're actually on a replacement dose, you want to make sure that your hormones are healthy during this recovery and rehab phase, right? Because it's important for muscle maintenance, protein synthesis, bone density, just maintaining normal brain chemistry. Normal physiological, like libido, all that stuff, very, very critical. So I'm going to continue with that, of course. And a lot of people have questions about supplements. This is like a really popular topic. I think a lot of people waste money on supplements when it comes to stuff they don't really need, and they just blow a bunch of money on it. I'm going to tell you what I'm spending money on and taking. My daily supplement stack includes fish oil, which supports inflammation balance and cell membrane health, and healthy lipids, etc., healthy brain, all that stuff. Fish oil, I take this every day, regardless if I'm injured or not. Every single day, I do something called methylated B12 and folic acid, which this supports cellular metabolism, energy production. I have an MTHFR variant. Again, you know this if you've done blood work with me. It's very important to keep homocysteine at bay for me, which is inflammation of the vessels. So I take methyl B every day, regardless of injury. In the winter and spring months, I take vitamin D, 5,000 IUs with K. It's critical for bone health and immune function. And I also take something called nattokinase. So nattokinase supports circulation. It's fibrolytic. In other words, it prevents things like blood stagnation and clotting and stuff like that. On testosterone replacement, I'm a fan of taking it. Just helps, make sure your blood's not getting thick, because my blood tends to do that on testosterone. Now, things I'm taking specific post-recovery or post-surgery and injury. One of them is called SPMs. I'm taking this in addition to fish oil, but specific pro-resolving mediators. Those are some things, those are special guys that are in fish oil. And there's some companies like Metagenics, for example, that have concentrated those into a supplement, which they help regulate and modulate inflammation. So I'm going to, introduce this specifically after the acute phase, so probably week 3 and beyond. My surgeon wanted me to do a baby aspirin every day while I'm casted up. I'm going to do that for the first 2 to 3 weeks here. Other things I'm introducing on and off, I introduced this, but specifically right now, magnesium and zinc, and also vitamin C. Vitamin C, again, it's really, really important for collagen production. So I'm going to be taking some extra vitamin C, like 1,000 milligrams for the next 3 months. That's it, guys. There's no other magical. I'm not taking any other like curcumins and all these other, fancy supplements that don't really matter. They don't really matter. The things that matter the most, again, are those pillars, right? So eating well, sleeping well, moving my body, managing stress, drinking water, super duper critical. And then, of course, those things that are very important on top of that, they're going to help move the needle, such as those peptides, the core supplements that I'm taking, and, of course, the continue with the testosterone replacement. So now I want to talk really quickly before we wrap this up about things that sabotage healing, because a lot of people don't realize that, they're doing these things and they're actually like fucking up their healing and delaying things. And they can actually, delay things enough where you won't heal properly ever. So smoking and nicotine is one of the first ones. A lot of people don't realize this, that nicotine causes vasoconstriction. So it means it reduces blood flow. So smokers have like a dramatically higher rate of surgical complication, delayed bone healing, infections. And this isn't just like smoking is worse, but then even routine regular nicotine use also has been connected with this delayed healing. Here's one that's very common: excessive non-steroidal anti-inflammatory use. Chronic NSAID use like aspirin, ibuprofen, naproxen, right? It impairs bone healing and tendon repair. If you use them short term, like I said, I was using them for a week, to get some sleep, but avoid long-term reliance at all costs. Do not take these things long-term because they will slow down and impair your healing process. Inactivity is one, I think, that is the biggest for most people. Losing muscle, right? Remember, losing muscle begins within days of immobilization, right? So movement restores circulation, maintains muscle, strengthens ligaments and tendons and bone. I think that a lot of people, they register as soon as they have any discomfort or pain, they should stop moving. Whereas I'm a huge fan of making sure that you're working with a professional that's helping you move through the type of discomfort that's going to get you a result over time, because you're going to have to deal with some pain, no doubt. Avoiding all pain is not the way to go. You want to avoid, obviously, re-injuring and causing damage, but making sure you're like rehabbing through the pain, despite the discomfort. The last one, and non-surprising to most people, is alcohol. Alcohol impairs protein synthesis, fucks your sleep up, crushes your immune system. Listen, like, recovery time is not the time to drink at all, especially not heavily. So it's just, I'm strongly suggesting you avoid alcohol altogether, which is what I've been doing since January. So even before this injury, but this is even more reason for me to continue the teetotaling. And then, of course, a lot of these recovery tools that are total bullshit and wastes of money. Now, I'm not saying that these are totally useless and that no one should use them. I'm just saying, if you're going to spend the time, money, focus, and energy on getting the better as quickly as possible, well, like special copper, jewelry, or like compression or wraps or some like stuff like that is not helpful. That's not worth your money. Detox supplements and shit like that is total bullshit. Anything with a proprietary blend in it is, an overpriced recovery supplement that's bullshit. Overpriced recovery powders, even things like cheap ultrasound devices or cheap lasers or cheap, what do you call them? TENS units. Most of that stuff's garbage. Most of that stuff is not going to help you heal faster, especially if you're not sleeping well and eating like crap and not moving your body. So these things will not save you. Of course, I'm a fan, and I'm going to probably cycle in some things like red light therapy, trying to get outside and get some sun, right, instead of red light therapy. But, in New England, still in kind of the doldrums of March, probably try to get some red light therapy going on. Obviously, that the photo light energy helps increase healing. I would love to get some sun as soon as possible, though, too. And of course, like we hear about PEMF, right, which is like like magnets, magnetism. You get this from grounding, from having your feet in the dirt and being outside, and which I cannot do right now. So, PEMF mats have been shown to accelerate things like bone healing and whatnot. So, there is some support there that, is valid, and I might try to introduce some of that, but really, like, that's the bulk of it, right? So your body's an incredible healing machine. Just know that you are designed to heal. Like it just requires the right conditions, right? Sleep, nutrition, movement, smart rehab. If you support these systems properly, your body will do what it needs to do, right? It recovers. The injury doesn't have to be the end of your competitive, life or your performance, right? If you handle it correctly, you can get stronger, more resilient, and be even more aware of your body than before, right? So that's my goal is to communicate that to you, to have this weaponized mindset, weaponized body to make sure you get back to baseline and get better. So hopefully you enjoyed this podcast. Again, guys, if you're interested in getting some lab work done to see if you're a candidate for things like hormone or a peptide, or even just figuring out how you can brighten up the light with your health, your performance, your recovery with, better lifestyle recommendations, based on actual lab work and actual objective data that's going to help you get there, shoot me a DM at the Weaponized Dad on Instagram, or jump on one of the links on the podcast notes. You can head to my website, weaponizedwellness.com, schedule a call. Love to chat with you. And again, thanks for listening. Talk to you guys soon.